Welcome, everybody. Welcome to SIMcast. This is our research talk by Social Issues in Management at Academy of Management. I am Devi Chatterjee, a PhD student at John Molson's School of Business at Concordia University. Today, we are excited to have with us Thomas Roulet, who is the professor of organizational sociology and leadership at the University of Cambridge. So thank you, Thomas, for having for your time and being here with us. We're really excited to have you.
Thank you. I'm excited to be with you guys as well.
Thanks. So we'll jump in and talk a little bit about your research journey, some of the questions that you have explored throughout your career, and a little bit on the thoughts about the future research that you're interested in or you think are important. So my first question, let's start at the start. How did you get interested in research? Why did you decide to do a PhD in management or studies broadly?
Good question. So when I decided I wanted to do a research master's, I was working on the trading floor of an investment bank, and I felt a little bit bored. And, it was an interesting job and I enjoyed it, but I just wanted to have a little bit more variety and diversity in what I was doing on a daily basis. And that's when I started thinking I should do a research degree. Not maybe a PhD, but maybe a master's, a research master's. And so I went on and worked for a think tank where I met someone who was thinking about an academic career and who kind of made me discover what could be an academic career and what it meant to do research. And so from there, I went into a research degree, master's, and then I went into doing my PhD. And because I was told you should be studying something you know about, I studied investment bankers during the financial crisis, having been myself an investment banker during the financial crisis, in the aim of trying to understand basically how are bankers reacting to the public disapproval that they are facing, and how are they resisting it? Why are they able to maintain their identity, to maintain their values and norms, even when they are heavily disapproved of?
And that was your PhD thesis around, right? Okay. So many of us are aware of your research. We're inspired by it. So you have developed since then, like works on negative social evaluations, whether it is stigma, scandal, even polarization. So how do you see your body of research, and are there like key ideas that you find yourself returning to when you think about organizations or everyday life and society?
So the core idea that I started my career with, and I'm still very interested in it, is the title of my first book, The Power of Being Divisive. And it's the idea that stigmatized actors, scandalous actors, deviant actors, those are different things. But I try to say that while we assume that those can always be negative, there are sometimes many positive in being a deviant actor, receiving negative social evaluations, or being at the center of a scandal. And in the 2020 book, obviously I talk about politicians in particular using that, in particular one famous politician, but I'm not going to spoil it. I'm sure you can go and read the book. And I don't want my ESTA to be cancelled, so I'm just not going to mention anything. But I still think this is, an idea that has a lot of validity in the world we live in. And I feel like actors tend to polarize their audiences to gain power, status, to gain loyal supporters. And you see this happening still at an even more intense degree in the political sphere, but also at the corporate level, with firms, deviating from the norms on purpose to create a niche for themselves or to stand out as an employer, but also, as a client. If you think about AI firms, we have basically 4 or 5 big actors in that field, and they try to be the most outrageous in some ways, or say the craziest thing. I'm meaning the CEO is trying to say the craziest thing to be distinguishable from each other. So I think this is, an idea that still has validity when people, organizations, social actors in general, polarize the audience by, saying things that are extreme or taking positions that are extreme to extract value from that audience or from that audience that will be loyal to them. So I think there's still a lot of value from that. And another thing that I've studied, and people always ask me, what is the link between the two? I've studied mental health, and in particular, stigma associated with mental health, but not only, and more recently, the practices that can be helpful to address mental health in organizations. And the connection, obviously, stigma is that mental health is negatively perceived, is not talked about. So we try to look at really what it means to name it and recognize it, and how from this we can really create a culture of well-being in organizations.
Yeah, thank you. That's very interesting. So I'm also thinking, so this idea of deviance, stigma, what do we extract out of it? Like, how do you see it advancing research and conversations in social issues and management?
I think more work still can be done on stigma, and there are new forms of stigma. The pushback on DEI, tells us that stigma still is an interesting topic. I think it's a more mature topic than it was when I started my PhD, especially all the work on organizational stigma. There is quite a large literature. When I started, the only paper on stigma were the 2 papers by Brian Hudson. So for me, it was a new concept. Now a lot has been done on stigma, and I think more work now is done across different levels. And if you think about the work I did with bankers, it was already multi-level. It was, talking about an industry being disapproved of and how does it affect people within that industry, whether they feel stigmatized or actually they feel empowered and loyal to their industry because of that stigma. And that's the argument I defended in my dissertation about bankers. So I think there's still potential to connect those different levels of analysis. I think we still have many other negative social evaluations that are being brought up in the field, whether it's infamy, whether it's other evaluations associated with deviance, whether it's the process of negative social evaluations emergence, like scandals. So I think the question of deviance is even broader than stigma, is even broader than the question of evaluation. And I think there is still a lot to do around why do people deviate from the norms? How does this change the norms? And when do they deviate from the norms purposefully to gain resources, either audience support or material resources? And importantly, and I think that is an important area of research, which I've also done some work on, is what are the implications of this deviance at the societal level? If everybody decides to deviate from the norm to create a niche, look at the political spectrum, everybody's trying to shock the audience. If everybody does it, why, is it still beneficial, or are there diminishing returns to deviance? Or diminishing impact on evaluation to deviance. And I think that is another important question for that literature in the next decade or so.
That's interesting. So, while exploring these ideas and communicating these ideas, where you have, of course, it is one thing communicating as a researcher, scholar in journals, the more traditional way of that we communicate. But at the same time, you have written more broadly. You have written books and you have communicated with larger audience who often do not, let's say, read uh, scientific journals. So, what would you say? How do you approach it? And and for other scholars, what would you suggest? How to sort of communicate more broadly?
I think those are different issues potentially. Um, the question of books, I think, is an important one, and you see a lot of people. So when I wrote my book in 2020, I had a colleague who told me, that this was insane. That, writing a book while being on the tenure track where only papers would count, they thought writing a book was an absurd idea. And I ended up writing a book because I like the freedom of writing the book. And it's true that the experience of writing a book is exhilarating. It's very different from papers because you have a lot more freedom. You have a lot more freedom and you have a lot more space. So you can really explore ideas. And that's what I did with the first book. The first book was very academic. I don't know, whether, it was a really good experience. The process was good. And the book, I think, has a positive impact on the literature. I don't know how far it's been read. I will be honest, it hasn't sold very well, and I think Stanford University Press would then contract me again to get me to ask me for another book. Despite the fact that the book, was finalist for the Terry Award for the Academy of Management Best Book Award, I don't think it sold very well. When I tell that to people, they said, "Oh, yes, it's because it's available in my library." So, maybe it's read, but it's not very well sold. But it's, getting citations. And importantly, I really enjoyed writing it, and I defended one major idea. And I'm hoping that, some people will pick up on that. And actually, some people did pick up on that. And, recently, Royston Greenwood passed away. That was very sad. Royston Greenwood wrote a little review of my book, and actually, that's the one work that I had done that he thought, was really good, and that he shared with people. Uh, and I had never heard him recommending a book before, and so it makes me think that there was something in writing this book, early in my career, and it was overall a good experience. Then I've also written a practitioner book, which I use in my teaching, and I use as an artifact. And books are artifact. They are used for one idea, for one concept, and they are something material associated with this a lot more than the papers. Uh, and I think very often, even if my book is not very well read, people often know more Thomas for the book, Thomas Roulet for the book than for my papers. So there are positives around that. I think we are moving towards people in our field writing more books, and you see that. And I think this is partly due to the fact that, the experience of writing papers with AI, the costs are reduced. So we get, as reviewers, as journals, as editors, there are a lot more submissions in journal. And so people are looking for different ways to consume research. And part of that is through buying and reading books. So I think there will be potentially a shift around that where, people, instead of writing 4 papers, they write one book. And they write one book with an academic press. And by the way, I often say that to people who are interested in that. If you are interested in writing a fairly academic book or a book that is in between an academic and practitioner, which academic presses also like, there is a space for that, and academic presses are really interested in commissioning books by scholars in our field. So I think this is a real opportunity. Then the other question was is related was on how do we spread the work that we do,
Yes.
and how do we get it to have an impact. I think one impact that we underestimate is the classroom. And I think the classroom is perfect to push your own research and to show students what they are getting by being exposed to research active faculty in their curriculum. So I think we really need to push our research in our teaching. I've been an avid user of social media. Again, I've been told by another colleague, senior colleague, early in my career, that I should be posting less on Twitter and writing more AMJs. That was, at a time where there were very few of us on Twitter. Maybe we were, I mean, we had even a reception at the Academy of Management for people on Twitter, and that was 30 people. That was, 15 years ago. Now every single person is on LinkedIn, not on Twitter anymore, obviously, but a lot of people are on LinkedIn. And I think there is value in that because very often, first, I read papers that I would not have read, that I would not have found if I hadn't read a description of those papers online. That includes papers by people I know and people I don't know. So people often that are outside of my field. And that was the same with Twitter, by the way. I would also discover papers and also I share papers that I've read. So it kind of like creates an incentive for me to read because I can then share what I've read. So yeah, people criticize LinkedIn saying, "Oh, it's all about boasting about your latest achievement and your paper," but I actually think there is a lot more in that. And when I read people writing about their paper, I find it useful and I read it a lot more than some empty post about AI by a random consultant. So I think there's a lot in social media that we can use. And by the way, LinkedIn, Twitter are useful because they also bridge the gap between your academic community and people outside your academic community, including alumni, students you have taught in the past that I stay in touch with and that, will be exposed to this. And I try always to kind of balance my publications so that I talk to those two audiences, practitioners, alumni, stakeholders of my school, and then the academic community.
Thank you. Yeah, those are very useful. So my last question to you would be more looking forward. From your perspective, what are some of the important issues in social issues in management that you feel are more important in society and you feel they are relatively unexplored and we should be focusing on, or there is an opportunity, let's say. Just wanted to know your thoughts on that.
I think for a long time, management scholars believed that they were focused on, profitability or firm level issues, on organizations that were for-profit organizations and large companies. And I think in the last, decade or so, even maybe the last 15 years, I think management scholars have realized that they can have an impact way beyond the private sector. And you see that with the strengthening of our the business and society scholarship, the strengthening of SIM as a division. So what is SIM about, and why am I a member of SIM instead of being a member of STR or another division? Is because I believe that the social issues in management, they have implications for social issues in general. That if we can solve social issues in the context of management, this has implication for social issues more broadly. And I think we need to continue to broaden our scope and horizon, think about what is going on in organizations, within organizations, but then think about how this can have an impact on broader societal issues. This is not new, what I'm saying, because we have had 10 years of grand challenges literature, 10 years of wicked problem literature. 20, 25 years of social innovation literature, which are, fields that are driven by management scholars. But I think we can go even beyond that, and we shouldn't be, afraid of trying to consider political issues, issues that have an impact on society. And so one of the topic that I see has really important that has been tackled by management scholars, and I read avidly this literature, although I don't work on this, is the topic of modern slavery. We have amazing research in our field on modern slavery, which really informs policy across the globe, in many countries. And modern slavery was not an obvious candidate for management scholarship, and yet this is an area in which we are having an impact as management scholars. So I think there are more topics like those where we have something to say, and this can have a much broader impact than just organizations and individuals. It can really have a society impact, and we're going to be in need of further stepping up because we live in a very polarized world, because there are so many tensions and there is very little middle ground in our society. And so I believe in the power of social science and management scholarship in creating that middle ground, creating that space for convergence around evidence, around sound and rigorous research.
Thank you. That was a very inspiring end. Thank you for your time again, Thomas. It was really nice having you. And yeah, thanks. Thank you to all the listeners, and we'll come back with the next episode.
Awesome. See you at the receptions and events of the SIM community at the Academy.
Yeah. Okay. Bye.
Bye.